Hi guys, welcome. Namaste, Rad is here. Welcome to your essential practice. Our focus today is on standing poses, chair pose and Virabhadrasana 1, warrior 1 pose. Both poses you remember from sun salutations A and B. Now we're going to specifically focus on alignment and any possible misalignments in those two poses. And we continue with a couple of more standing poses. Please come up to standing. Our first pose we're focusing on is Utkatasana. We often use a nickname, chair pose, but the true name is Awkward Pose or Fierce Pose. Let's look into it. From the side, what is happening here, a deep knee flexion. You're bending your knees. Now your feet are in dorsiflexion. So it's quite a stretch for your calf muscles here. It really depends again on your flexibility. How low you can go is determined by the length of your calf muscles, soleus and gastrocnemius, two muscles here. You can start with resting your elbows on top of your knees and pretending you are sitting on the chair. The lower you can go, the better. Beautiful stretch for your knees here, and also a strength builder here for your quadriceps and for your glutes. Holding this position, deep knee flexion, deep hip flexion as well. And please come back to standing again. Anytime you feel tired, you feel like you're lacking motivation, this is a great pose to practice. Instead of a double espresso, it will immediately spike your energy and build some heat and fire in your body. Let's do it one more time. Bend your knees and sit in your chair. Now take your pelvis back more. The common misalignment is to go a little bit too forward with the shins. So you feel immediately it goes into your ankles here. So you have to take your sit bones back more, as if you were sitting in the chair. Now, spinal extension and arms straight, sitting low, staying 5 breaths here. Breathing deeply, come back to your Ujjayi breath. Breathing to your abdomen, sitting a little bit lower. Looking up between your hands, shoulders back away from your ears. One more breath, a little bit deeper, sitting down. And come back to your standing. Great. Again, strengthening your quadriceps, your muscles here, thigh muscles, and also our glutes. Now, there are different ways to enter into this pose. I like coming in from seated pose, touching the floor first. That gives me a nice feedback here for how long I go into my seated pose. Now arms goes up. That's the one way. The second way is starting with your arms. So you extend your arms over your head. Modify version, separate your hands. Utkatasana or Urdhva Namaskarasana, palms touching together. Choose depending on your shoulder flexibility. Arms up. So first you're focusing on the extension of your spine. Lifting your heart, lengthening your spine, reaching through your fingertips, keeping that. Now you can go into your chair pose. It might be easier for some of you already having that extension and trying to work on that more vertical spine. going a little bit lower, lifting higher and lower in your seated. Breathing here. Entering from the squat is a little bit harder because all you have to do here is literally work on extending and lifting the spine, which might be more challenging. So entering from the top down, it's already the pose is established. Just all you have to do is bend your knees. Utkatasana, fierce pose. Yes. Great. Now let's look into this common misalignments here with regarding to our knees. Very often what happens in this pose, the knees will collapse again in. Lack of strength, shortness here in the adductor muscles, the inner muscles of your thigh. So, great way to work with that is to grab a block and position your block between your thighs. Squeezing the block with your inner thighs, it gives you a chance to activate those muscles here on the inside of your legs. Firing up these muscles, squeezing the block, and then you go down into your chair, sitting again. Make sure you don't go too far with your shins. Take your sit bones back and arms straight. Squeeze the block again. Looks like this from the side. Take your sit bones back, spine extending straight up and sitting lower and lower. Now to strengthen our glutes, there's one more great thing you can do. Start with gentle squat. And place your hands outside of your knees this time. Press your knees into your hands. So immediately what happens, you feel the action here on your glutes. External rotation, activating the outer hip muscles, and sit lower and lower, pressing your knees. It's another way to enter into this pose in a safe way without misaligning our knees. Try that. Sitting low, arms straight. Chair pose. Exhale. Wonderful. Let's continue. The next pose is Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. And it comes from the hero. Vira means the hero. Vira 1, Vira 2, Vira 3, all those three warriors. Shall we try? Virabhadrasana 1. Reach your arms up over your head and bring your palms touching. Urdhva Namaskarasana. Shoulders down. If this feels really tight in your shoulders, again modify this position to separate your hands shoulder width apart. Now extend your spine straight up, big toes touching, inner heels touching, and step your feet wide apart. Step your feet wide apart, not too wide, just about you feel like you have a stretch in your hip, pelvis area. Now turn your right foot in and turn your left leg out. In this situation, what happens, your back foot is turning in a lot, like 10 degrees angle, and your pelvis turns towards the short edge of your mat. So your right hip goes forward, my left hip goes back. That's the starting position. Lift through your spine, lengthen your tailbone, and exhale, bend your front knee. Warrior 1. So I'm a little bit too long. I might have to shorten my stance and turn my back foot more in. Very intense stretch for your back, again, calf. Very important to watch out that back hip. The hip wants to open towards your back foot. You want to resist that and take your hip forward. So your hips are facing front of your mat, short edge of your mat. And I will use this term, square your hips. What I mean by that is the hips are aligned facing short edge of the mat. Bend your front knee 90 degrees. That's your warrior one position. Virabhadrasana 1. Switch side. Lift through your spine. Elbows straight. Turn your left foot deeply in and turn your right foot out 90 degrees. Lift through your heart. Extension in your spine. Lift, lift, lift. And bend your front knee. Warrior 1. Again, working on taking that left outer hip forward more, my right outer hip back more. Bend your knee 90 degrees. Press down through the back of your left heel, outer left heel, front knee bend. And come back. Step your feet together back to Tadasana. Another way to enter into this pose, from standing Tadasana, hands on your hips. You simply step your right leg back, ground your back foot. Really important to ground that back heel. Back knee straight. Square your hips. Then bend your front knee. Virabhadrasana, warrior 1. Now, see what happens. There's a lot of anterior tilt in my pelvis. Again, it depends on your body shape. You want to resist that by lengthening the tailbone and lifting abdomen, lifting your pubic bone. Trying to, again, square your hips forward, arms straight, warrior 1. Bend your knee more. And come back. Second side, hands on your hips, step your left leg back and try. That back foot is turning a lot in. Square your hips, lift your spine, shoulders back, lengthen your tailbone. Exhale, bend your front knee. Bend your front knee deeply, warrior 1. Arms straight, palms together or palms touching. Gaze forward. Another fierce pose, building heat, awakening heart qualities, courage, finding center, building resilience. Release your hands to your hips, step forward. Great. Couple of things to look into. Your front knee. Your front knee wants to collapse into the midline. Pay attention to that by aligning your knee with the front here, your toes, 4th, 5th toe. And to do that, again, you can help yourself positioning your hand outside of your knee or fist or hand flat. Press your knee a lot into your hand and feel again activation in your outer hip muscle. That abduction, taking your knee away from the midline. And one more thing. It might be challenging to ground that back foot. So again, it so much is defined by the flexibility in your calf muscles, how tight, how flexible those muscles are. What might happen here, it might you might have to compromise with that knee bend. Let's do something else. To modify that action, we can lift the back knee. It becomes a little bit more about your balance, so you might want to practice at the wall. The knee is lifted, and now you have so much more space to square your hips. Modify warrior one, or we call it a crescent warrior, crescent pose, different names for this pose. Arms up. A little bit easier for that action of grounding here of your back heel. Switch side. Try it with your second leg. If you cannot ground your back heel, then again lift. Position your heel above your toes and bend your front knee deeply. Modified warrior one. Try to straighten your back knee. Straighten your back leg a lot and bend your knee more and more. Lengthen your tailbone, lift your pubic bone and arms coming over your head. Bend your knee more, gazing forward. Crescent warrior. And please come forward, Tadasana. Continuing. From warrior one, we can take it further into a couple of more poses. Let's come back to standing in Tadasana. Parsvottanasa, intense stretch to the side. Place your hands on your hips and step your right leg back. Again, not too long, not too wide. Turn your back foot in. Now, take your blocks with you and position your blocks either side of your front foot. The front foot is pointing short edge of your mat. In this position, your both knees are straight. Pull your left knee up. Take your right hip forward, left hip back. Inhale. Your legs are powerful, pressing into your back heel, lifting your front knee. And then bow forward. Bow forward, all the way, hinging from your hips. Hinge forward, keep your spine straight. The common misalignment here is to start rounding the spine because of the tightness here in your glutes and your hamstring and your spine. You want to work on lifting your breastbone, lifting your chest. Shoulder stays the back of your rib cage. Bow forward. Go as deep as you can without bending your front knee. Then rest your hands on your blocks. Maybe on the fingertips. Depends how flexible you are. Bowing more deeper in, remaining straight line in your spine. Parsvottanasa. Step forward, switch. Hands on your hips, step your left leg back. First thing to do is again square your hips. Take your left hip forward, right hip back, neutral pelvis. Lengthen your tailbone, lift, engage your abdomen. Lift your spine again, shoulders back, lift through your heart, lift your chin and hinge from your hips. Reaching forward slowly, front knee is straight. Breathe, extending the axial extension in your spine. Crown of your head is extending forward. You can gaze down gently without rounding the spine. And then rest your hands on your blocks. Front leg straight, back leg straight. Gently pull your kneecaps. So again, activate your quad muscles, lifting your knees. Press into the outer heel. Right hip goes back. Lengthen your spine more. If you're more flexible, you might want to lower your blocks medium height or lowest height, or don't use blocks. But now you can see what's happening here. My spine starts to round, so I have to come back to this choice, lengthening my spine, shoulders away from my ears, and step forward. Step forward back to Tadasana. Neutral pelvis, lengthen your tailbone, lift your pubic bone, firm the muscles of your legs, roll your shoulders back, relax your shoulders, back of your neck is long. One more pose in the group of heat building experience. Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3. We're going to enter this pose from Virabhadrasana 1. Again, we need 2 blocks. Position your blocks on the highest height. Place your hands on your hips and step your right leg back. Good. Ground your back heel, take your right hip forward, left hip back, square your hips, lift through your spine, and bend your front knee. Warrior 1 position. Great. So now, continuing that, again, hinge from your hips and lean forward. Lean forward as far as you can. Shoulder stays back. And position your hands on your blocks. Next step, lift your back heel. Reach your spine forward, lift your chest, chin, and shift your weight into your standing left leg. Your right leg is lifted, hands on your blocks. Now, same thing here. Common misalignment here is to open that hip. You want to take that outer right hip down, squaring your pelvis. Pelvis is horizontal to your mat. Top leg is straight. Spine is straight. Now this pose will ask you to engage your core, lengthen your tailbone and corset your abdomen, the muscle around your waist called transversus abdominis, stabilizing this position, balancing on your left foot. The last thing to do is to extend both arms towards the back of your mat. Warrior 3. Deep breathing. 5 breaths. Pull your left kneecap. Firm the muscles of your standing leg. Straighten your top leg. Feel the heat rising. Breathe deeply into the heat. And catch your blocks. And lower your right foot down. Let's take a moment in forward bend. Bow forward. Forward bending is always a great medicine to calm the nervous system, release the tension. Place your hands on your hips, shoulders back, and come up slowly. Use your core. Back to standing Tadasana pose. Second side. Place your hands on your hips and step your left leg back. Ground your left heel and bend your front knee. Square your hips. Lift through your spine. Extend your arms over your head. Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. Really great way to enter into Warrior 3 from Warrior 1. Now, release your hands back down to your hips and Lean forward. Go as deep as you can, almost to a place where you're resting your right side of your rib cage here on your thigh bone. Now lift your back heel. Take your left hip forward, square your hips, and slowly transition using your blocks to your second side, warrior three. Straighten your top leg, lengthen your spine. Maybe you don't need highest height of your block, maybe you can go a little bit lower with your medium height. Standing on your right leg. So that's what is tricky about this position, is that balance here. A foot, if you have a weak ankle muscles, it might really ask you to press more into that standing foot, into your mat, just finding more stability. Straighten your top leg. Right hip back, left hip down. And again, lift your arms, full pose, warrior three, balancing. Breathe into that challenge, finding center. And release. Bow forward. Uttanasana. And sit for a moment. Grab your block, one or two. Position your block between your heels. Sitting in hero pose. Just observe how you're feeling. The intensity of this practice teaches us how to find center in the midst of challenge. When things get tough, things gets wobbly, where is it? Where's that still point inside of us we can come back to? Bring the palms to your heart. Namaste.